She offered no resistance when she was handcuffed at the hotel front desk. No ID, no explanation, just a silent woman, resolute in her refusal to reveal her identity despite the serious accusations and suspicious glances around her. The hearing at the small-town courthouse was expected to be straightforward and swift until the heavy doors abruptly swung open. A Navy admiral in full-dress uniform strode down the center aisle. Every veteran present snapped to attention and saluted on reflex. The judge's face went pale as he slowly scanned the sealed, classified documents handed to him, and in that moment, everything changed. A frigid morning had settled over the sleepy outskirts of Maine. Thick fog rolled in across the coastal civilian shooting range, wrapping it in silence. Inside, a group of white men casually prepared for their routine practice session. Laughter and friendly handshakes filled the air, creating a comfortable, familiar atmosphere among regulars. Through this scene, a quiet black woman entered. She wore a simple gray jacket, worn jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low to hide her face. She walked to the farthest firing lane, the one seldom used, opened her rifle case, and began assembling her weapon with astonishing ease and speed. Frank Sullivan, the range manager, watched intently from behind the safety monitoring glass. After more than 20 years on the job, Frank knew every regular customer, and yet this black woman was completely unfamiliar. His gaze locked on her, intrigued by the anomaly. "Who is she?" Frank whispered, his brow furrowed. The woman, Alicia Harper, commenced her session. She inhaled deeply, controlled her breathing with practiced precision, and gently squeezed the trigger. The first round left the barrel with barely a whisper, yet the distant target immediately confirmed her skill, an unerring bullseye, a feat reserved for seasoned marksmen. She fired a second shot, then a third. Alicia shot with extraordinary calm, confidence, and pinpoint accuracy. But instead of admiration, the white men around her exchanged uneasy, distrustful looks. Whispers swelled. "How can she shoot like that? It's strange. A black woman wielding a rifle like that, what could she be planning?" Frank frowned. Their murmurs rang in his ears, unsettling him. He too was amazed and unnerved by Alicia's remarkable talent. Yet beneath it all, ingrained prejudices stirred, planting seeds of doubt and suspicion. A regular patron, Carl Shenson, a white man, approached Frank, lowering his voice. "Aren't you going to check her out, Frank? A mysterious black woman shooting that accurately? It's not normal." Frank met Carl's gaze and hesitated, but Carl's words had already taken root. He gave a slow nod, pulled out his phone, and called the local police. "There's a black woman at my range making some very unusual shots," Frank said quietly, avoiding Alicia's eyes. "I think you should come investigate." At the far end of the range, Alicia continued her impeccable shooting as if oblivious to the hostile stares. Her face remained calm, almost expressionless, but beneath that impassive exterior lay unwavering focus and perfect control. Minutes later, the wail of police sirens shattered the morning stillness. Alicia paused, turned her head toward the entrance. Two local officers rushed in, hands hovering near their holsters, faces etched with caution and unease. Frank exhaled, watching Alicia with a vague pang of remorse stirring in his chest. A haunting question echoed in his mind. Was I wrong? Frank stood frozen in the small room, staring at the two officers who had just stepped through the door. The gnawing question echoed in his mind. Had calling the police really been the right choice? Before he could ponder any further, a hand landed on his shoulder and he whirled around in surprise. Carl Jensen stood beside him, his gaze full of guarded suspicion. "Do you really think she's just an ordinary person, Frank?" Carl whispered, each word loaded with implication, as if trying to drive Frank's own doubts even deeper. Who just happens to shoot that accurately? If she isn't an agent or worse, a criminal? Frank turned back to Carl, his lined face drawn in a weary frown. I'm not sure, but she hasn't done anything wrong. Hasn't done anything wrong? Carl's lips curled into a bitter smile. A mysterious black woman shows up, outshooting every marksman here? We can't take that lightly, Frank. I served 10 years in the military. That level of skill doesn't come without specialized training. Are you certain she came here just to practice? Carl's words struck Frank like a blade, stirring the buried prejudices he'd long tried to suppress. Frank knew Carl well, a retired veteran who in daily life seemed polite enough, but whose worldview was sharply defined along racial lines. Meanwhile, at the far end of the range, Alicia calmly packed away her gear as though she couldn't sense the hostile stares aimed her way. She methodically disassembled her rifle, her slender fingers working with swift professional precision, her eyes unwaveringly focused. And yet, the more expertly she performed, the more suspicious the onlookers became. To them, her prowess wasn't something to admire, but a potential threat, a difference to be feared. Detectives Marcus Wells and Adam Reed quietly approached Alicia, their caution nearly exaggerated. Marcus was a veteran investigator, proud of his keen instincts, but also prone to overreacting to anything outside the familiar. Adam was younger, but even more overt in his doubt. His eyes narrowed as if Alicia were the most dangerous person he'd ever encountered. Marcus cleared his throat, voice laced with wariness. "Excuse me, ma'am. We need to see your ID and your firearms permit." Alicia looked up, meeting Marcus's gaze with calm assurance. "I don't have my papers on me." Marcus's eyes narrowed further. "You do realize that carrying a weapon without identification is a serious matter?" "I understand that, officer," Alicia replied tersely. Adam stepped closer to Marcus, whispering something inaudible. Though Alicia didn't catch the words, she felt the thickening suspicion in their demeanor. From across the room, Carl watched with arms folded, an expression of vindication on his face as if to say, "See? I told you so." He shot a quick nod to Frank. Frank shifted uncomfortably, torn between his belief in justice and the creeping doubt seeded by prejudice. Finally, he looked away from Alicia and down at the floor, shame flooding his heart. But he remained silent. Marcus's tone grew colder, more official. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you'll have to come with us to the station to verify your identity. We can't take any risks here." Without resistance, Alicia extended her hands. In a swift, practiced motion, Marcus and Adam snapped the handcuffs on. The bystanders watched in heavy silence, some with satisfaction, others with mere curiosity, but no one spoke up in her defense. Implicitly, they all agreed she deserved this treatment, simply because she was unlike them. As the two detectives led Alicia past the small room, Frank stood rooted to the spot. Their eyes met, hers composed yet piercing, a silent rebuke he could not evade. The door swung shut behind them. Frank exhaled, alone with the question that haunted him. Who was truly in the wrong here? The mysterious woman, or me, the one who let prejudice override his conscience? The patrol car eased away from the range, carrying Alicia in silence in the back seat, her wrists still bound by the cold metal of the handcuffs. In the stifling air of the vehicle, Detective Marcus Wells stole a glance at Alicia through the rearview mirror, his eyes probing as if searching for something else, some clue to justify the swirling suspicions in his mind. "Alicia Harper," Marcus began, breaking the tense quiet with deliberately measured courtesy, his tone cool and insistent. "Your name sounds ordinary enough, but the performance you put on at the range was anything but." Alicia said nothing, staring straight ahead with an unsettling calm that only made Marcus shift uncomfortably. He pressed on. "You know, in a small town like this, strangers stand out right away. A stranger with such uncanny shooting ability, it's downright rare." Alicia turned to him smoothly. "Officer, I came here simply to practice. I'm not sure what you find so troubling." Marcus gave a brief, skeptical laugh. "Troubling? It's vigilance. A young black woman shows up out of nowhere at a civilian range, with a high-powered rifle, no paperwork, no background. What would you think if you were me?" Detective Adam Reed, riding shotgun, had been silent until now, but his eyes betrayed his own doubts. He leaned forward, annoyance clear in his voice. "If you'd been honest about who you are from the start, we wouldn't be wasting our time like this." Alicia did not reply, only let out a quiet sigh as she gazed out the window. She was used to this kind of interrogation, the unspoken prejudice that flared the moment someone saw her skin. To them, her skill wasn't something to admire. It was a threat to be neutralized. At the small-town police station, Alicia's arrival seemed to unsettle everyone. Curious stares from patrol officers and unfriendly looks from clerks followed her as Marcus and Adam escorted her into the interview room. Marcus pulled out a chair opposite Alicia and sat down slowly, tapping his fingers on the tabletop as though testing her resolve. The harsh overhead light illuminated every feature of Alicia's composed face. Marcus squinted, scrutinizing her every expression before speaking in a clipped, authoritative tone. "I want you to understand the situation you're in. We don't see people like you here often. People with no clear history yet showing skills like a military sniper. Have you ever lived abroad, Miss Harper?" The question seemed innocuous but was loaded with insinuation, that Alicia might be a dangerous, professionally trained operative. Alicia recognized the implication and met his gaze steadily. "I fail to see how where I've lived is relevant to why I'm here." Marcus's brow furrowed as he leaned forward, voice edged with severity. "It's very relevant, Alicia. Lately, we've had an uptick in incidents involving professionally trained extremists slipping into quiet communities like ours and causing havoc. And frankly, people with backgrounds different from what we're used to are often exploited to blend in." Adam stood behind Marcus, arms crossed, nodding in agreement as if Marcus spoke for him too. Alicia felt the weight of his words. She looked Marcus in the eye and replied with measured firmness, "I understand your concerns, Detective, but your suspicion is based on prejudice, not evidence." Marcus blinked, taken aback by Alicia's clarity and candor, as if she were the one interrogating him. He drew a deep breath, reminding himself to stay professional and not let personal feeling cloud the investigation. "Perhaps you don't grasp your predicament, Miss Harper," Marcus said coolly. "Until you cooperate fully and tell us the truth, I can make no promises about your outcome." Alicia met his words without flinching, though her eyes betrayed a deep disappointment at the blatant bias unfolding before her. "I know exactly what my situation is," Alicia replied. "What I don't understand is why you decided I was suspicious simply because I'm not like those you're used to seeing." The room's tension crackled at Alicia's words. Marcus clenched his fist, anger flaring, even as an uneasy doubt stirred in his gut. Alicia was unlike any suspect he'd ever arrested, unafraid, unwavering, and unequivocally composed. A single question loomed in Marcus's mind, stirring a fear he couldn't ignore. Could it be that this time I'm the one making the grave mistake." The air in the interrogation room grew thick and stifling when the door slammed open. Marcus Wells turned to see who had entered. Police Chief John Daniels, his direct superior, renowned for his stern, conservative approach. With salt-and-pepper hair and a face carved by years of seriousness, Daniels exuded an almost forbidding coldness. He fixed his gaze on Alicia as if she were the most dangerous threat he'd ever encountered. Daniels strode to the table and pulled out a chair to sit directly across from Alicia, the motion brusque and deliberately intimidating. He said nothing at first, simply studying her intently, his eyes cold, as though appraising a clear and present danger. "Ms. Alicia Harper," Daniels began finally, his voice low and resonant with authority, "you've truly sent this small town into a tailspin. A mysterious black woman shows up at the range and demonstrates near superhuman marksmanship. In nearly 30 years on the force, I've never seen anything like it." Alicia remained composed, her expression betraying no flicker of emotion. Her calm only seemed to irk Daniels further. He leaned forward, both hands planted on the table, head tilted in scrutiny. "In today's world where security is paramount, we must exercise extra caution with individuals of complex backgrounds. You understand what I'm implying, don't you?" Marcus stood silently beside Daniels, his face equally wary. He knew his boss well. Daniels was especially sensitive to anyone who didn't fit the mold of their tight-knit community. But this time, his caution was veering dangerously close to a witch hunt. "Ms. Harper," Daniels continued, suspicion lacing his tone, "if you won't cooperate, I'm afraid we'll have to dig deeper. There's no reason a woman like you, with your background, could so effortlessly possess such specialized skills without drawing the attention of federal agencies." Alicia still said nothing, but this time she looked Daniels directly in the eye, her gaze unwavering yet tinged with sorrow, as if she'd grown accustomed to this kind of baseless suspicion, rooted only in her skin color and origin. Her silence, far from diffusing the situation, only seemed to enrage Daniels more. "You think staying silent will protect you?" Daniels snapped, patience fraying. "We have all the time and resources to find out who you really are. Do you think you're smarter than the police, or do you genuinely have something to hide?" Marcus frowned. Daniels' overt anger unsettled him. As a seasoned detective, Marcus knew letting emotion drive an interrogation was a grave mistake. Yet he couldn't deny that deep down, Daniels' irrational doubts echoed his own uncertainties. Daniels rose and began to pace behind Alicia like a predator circling its prey, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You know, people like you, those who remain silent, hiding themselves, are often the most dangerous. Someone thoroughly trained, able to push past all limits and blend perfectly into society. But we won't let that happen here, not in this town." Alicia drew a slow, steady breath and spoke for the first time, her tone gentle but powerful. "I'm not sure what I've done to earn such speculation. I came to the range only to practice, nothing more. And what you're saying about my background, where I come from, that says more about your prejudice than it does about me." Her words struck Daniels like a blow, his face flushed with anger, his hand balling into a fist. "Are you accusing me of racism, Miss Harper?" he thundered. Alicia met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not accusing you, Chief. I'm simply asking you to consider whether your conclusions about me are grounded in evidence, or in what you want to see." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his threat as cold as ice. "You'll regret this attitude. I will investigate you thoroughly, and if I find so much as a shred of proof that you're lying to us, You will pay dearly." He signaled to Marcus to follow him out. As the interrogation room door slammed shut behind them, Marcus couldn't shake the heavy guilt and unease rising within him. He wondered if they had gone too far, if justice itself had been compromised. Alone in the silent room, Alicia sat with her head bowed slightly. Her eyes hardened, but within them lay a profound sadness and disappointment. Daniel's harsh, prejudiced words echoed in her mind, a reminder that no matter how hard she tried or how much she sacrificed to people like him, she would always be an outsider, suspect simply because of her race and her abilities. Yet she knew one thing with certainty. She was far more than they imagined. And sooner or later, the truth would force them to open their eyes to their own grievous mistake. The next morning, the little courtroom in Coastal Harbor was packed shoulder to shoulder. The air felt heavy and tense, every creak and shuffle echoing unnervingly through the silence. Alicia was led in, stepping slowly in her bright orange prison jumpsuit, wrists still bound by cold steel cuffs. Her gaze was fixed straight ahead, unflinching under the sea of suspicious, inquisitive stares from the townspeople filling both sides of the bench. At the bench, Judge Eleanor Harmon frowned as two groups in dark suits entered, each bearing an air of icy authority. One was led by FBI Special Agent Robert Thomas, stern and unyielding. The other by Samuel Griffin from Homeland Security, sharp-eyed and challenging. Their very presence sent a ripple of commotion through the courtroom. "What is the meaning of this?" Judge Harmon demanded, striving to rein in her irritation at the unexpected intrusion into her small-town proceeding. Agent Thomas stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "Your Honor, the FBI is formally requesting to take over this case. We have grounds to suspect that Alicia Harper is connected to international extremist organizations. This is a matter of national security." Agent Griffin cut in, competitive and resolute. "With all due respect, Your Honor, the Department of Homeland Security is the appropriate authority here. We've been tracking individuals with skills similar to Ms. Harper's. This is a clear terrorism-related matter." The two agents exchanged icy glares, neither yielding an inch, further thickening the courtroom tension. Everyone watched in silence, awaiting the judge's ruling. From the defendant's seat, Alicia remained perfectly calm, her face betraying no fear at these grave, public accusations. She knew that, right now, her silence and composure were her strongest defense against these baseless charges. Special Agent Thomas turned to Alicia, his tone crisp and unrelenting. "We've uncovered several anomalies in Ms. Harper's background and recent activities. No ordinary person achieves such rifle proficiency without professional military training. We believe she's an undercover operative." Agent Griffin stepped closer, his voice carrying an even more menacing edge. "Worse still, we suspect Harper may have contact with terrorist groups operating outside the U.S. She poses a threat we cannot ignore." Alicia said nothing, though her eyes narrowed briefly with sorrow and frustration. These severe, unfounded accusations cut deep. She understood that speaking up now could not undo the prejudice already filling this room. Judge Harmon's frown deepened as she addressed the federal agents, her voice cold with displeasure. "You may not introduce such serious allegations in my courtroom without clear evidence. This hearing concerns local legal matters, and so far there's been no proof against Ms. Harper beyond her failure to produce identification." Agent Thomas advanced, voice steely and insistent. "We have every reason to believe Ms. Harper is far more dangerous than she appears. Her refusal to cooperate and prolonged silence only reinforce our concerns. Ignoring these warning signs would be unconscionable." Agent Griffin nodded in agreement. And if we do ignore them, the responsibility will rest on all of us, Your Honor." Judge Harmon fell silent for a moment, weighing the gravity of what had unfolded before her. She knew this decision could alter Alicia's life forever. A woman she had never met, yet who had already been judged by the community's deepest biases. Below, Detective Marcus Wells stood quietly, absorbing the scene. Beside him, Chief Daniels watched with a self-satisfied yet furtively unsettled expression. Marcus couldn't help but realize that the very doubts he once harbored were now being used to condemn an innocent woman simply because she was different, because her skill and her skin scared those around her. Marcus glanced at Alicia one more time. She sat motionless like a statue, her face resolute and unbowed, and in his heart, a growing pang of remorse whispered that he too was complicit in a terrible mistake, one that might never be undone. When the tension in the courtroom had nearly reached its peak, a sudden sound rang out from the massive oak doors at the rear of the room. The doors burst open with a powerful swing, drawing every eye toward them. The murmur of voices died away instantly, replaced by a hush of curiosity and astonishment. The man who entered carried himself with commanding authority, his calm yet resolute bearing filling the space. He wore the immaculate dress uniform of a senior Navy officer, the medals on his chest gleaming like beacons. This was Admiral William Parker, a presence so weighty that everyone instinctively rose a little straighter. Even Judge Eleanor Harmon, moments before hesitating over the jurisdictional tug-of-war between the FBI and Homeland Security, fell silent and stared at Admiral Parker with a mixture of surprise and respect. Without a moment's delay, Admiral Parker strode forward. Each step echoed firmly against the wooden floor. 2 other Navy officers followed, faces stern. One of them carried a dossier sealed with a scarlet stamp. Reaching the bench, Admiral Parker bowed his head slightly to Judge Harmon, then turned his gaze to Alicia. In the instant their eyes met, a shadow of regret and anger flickered across his stern features, but just as quickly he composed himself. "Your Honor," Admiral Parker's voice rang out, rich with authority. "I am here representing the United States Navy and the Department of Defense. We request an immediate halt to these proceedings." FBI's Robert Thomas and DHS's Samuel Griffin advanced at once, their expressions a blend of confusion and disbelief. Thomas spoke first, his tone edged with irritation. "With all due respect, Admiral, we are handling—" Parker cut him off with a sharp look. "Precisely. This is a matter of national security, but not in the way you think." He turned to the officer at his side, accepted the sealed dossier, and placed it decisively before Judge Harmon. His gaze was unwavering. "These are classified documents pertaining to Operation Silent Harbor. I trust you will understand once you review them." Judge Harmon studied Parker for a heartbeat, then broke the seal on the dossier. The courtroom held its breath as she flipped through the pages. Her expression shifted from surprise to genuine astonishment, and finally to something like admiration. Looking up at Admiral Parker, her voice was steady but moved. "Based on what I've just read, all charges against Commander Harper are hereby dismissed. This court is adjourned." A stunned buzz rose through the courtroom. Marcus Wells and John Daniels stood rigid, their eyes wide with disbelief. Thomas and Griffin exchanged helpless glances, then turned toward Alicia, unable to fathom what had just occurred. Admiral Parker faced Alicia, and for the first time, his stern countenance softened with empathy and respect. "Commander Harper, I apologize profoundly for the significant inconvenience you endured during this covert mission." Those words hit like a shock wave. Everyone who had doubted, accused, or questioned Alicia felt a flush of shame sweep over them. Marcus remained rooted to the spot, his mind racing. He could not believe that the young black woman he had so fiercely accused was, in fact, a senior officer leading a top-secret operation. Slowly, Alicia rose and met Admiral Parker's eyes. Her voice was quiet yet powerful. "Thank you, Admiral Parker. I was only doing my duty." The petite courtroom fell into a silence so complete you could hear every shallow breath. The truth revealed was too vast, too unexpected, and utterly at odds with their assumptions. As Alicia and Admiral Parker exited, no one dared glance at her with suspicion again. All that remained was a profound respect and a bitter regret. Marcus watched their figures fade through the doors. He knew, in that moment, he could never see the world the same way again. The blind prejudices he had harbored were forever shattered by an undeniable truth. And more than ever, Marcus understood the depth of his mistake. A mistake he vowed he would spend the rest of his life trying to make right. The tension in the courtroom reached a breaking point when a sudden sound echoed from the massive oak doors at the back. They swung open with authority, drawing every eye. The commotion inside fell silent, replaced by a mix of curiosity and stunned surprise. A man entered, exuding quiet but unmistakable power. His high-ranking Navy uniform gleamed with medals across his chest, commanding the room's full attention. This was Admiral William Parker, his very presence straightening every spine in the courtroom. Even Judge Eleanor Harmon, moments earlier torn between the FBI and Homeland Security's jurisdictional tussle, fell silent, looking at Admiral Parker with awe and respect. Without hesitation, Admiral Parker strode forward, each step firm on the hardwood floor. Two naval officers followed, their expressions grim. One carried a folder sealed with a vibrant red stamp. Reaching the bench, Admiral Parker gave Judge Harmon a brief, respectful nod, then turned his gaze to Alicia. For an instant, regret and restrained anger flickered across his stern features before he regained his composure. "Your Honor," Admiral Parker announced, his voice resonant and authoritative, "I represent the United States Navy and the Department of Defense. I request that this proceeding be halted immediately." FBI's Robert Thomas and DHS's Samuel Griffin stepped forward in unison, their faces a mix of confusion and suspicion. Thomas spoke first, displeasure in his tone. "Excuse me, Admiral, but we are handling a national security matter. This is not the time to—" Admiral Parker cut him off with a sharp glance. "Precisely. It is a national security matter, but not in the way you think." He turned to the officer at his side, took the sealed document and placed it decisively before Judge Harmon. His eyes conveyed absolute resolve. "This is a classified dossier on Operation Silent Harbor. I trust Your Honor will understand its significance once you read it." Judge Harmon glanced at Admiral Parker for a moment, then carefully broke the seal and began to leaf through the pages. The courtroom fell so silent you could hear the faint rustle of paper. The judge's expression shifted from surprise to genuine astonishment, and finally to clear admiration. She looked up at Admiral Parker, her voice steady but moved. "Based on this document, all charges against Miss Harper are hereby dismissed. This court is adjourned." Shock rippled through the courtroom. Marcus Wells and Chief Daniels stood frozen, their expressions a blend of disbelief and amazement at the sudden turn of events. Thomas and Griffin looked at each other, baffled, then at Alicia, unable to fathom what had just happened. Admiral Parker turned to Alicia, his stern demeanor softening into empathy and respect. "Commander Harper, I apologize deeply for the undue hardship you've endured while carrying out this covert mission." At his words, the courtroom seemed to freeze. Those who'd criticized, doubted, and accused Alicia felt as if they'd been doused with cold water, embarrassment washing over them instantly. Marcus Wells stood motionless, his mind reeling. He could not believe that the young black woman he'd so harshly suspected was, in fact, the commanding officer of a top-secret military operation. Alicia rose slowly and looked Admiral Parker in the eye for the first time, her voice calm yet powerful. "Thank you, Admiral Parker. I was only carrying out my orders." The small courtroom remained hushed, each breath held. The truth revealed was too vast, too unexpected, and so far from anything they'd imagined. As Alicia left the defendant's area, no one dared to cast a doubtful glance her way. Instead, a profound silence filled the room, one of respect, contrition, and the realization that their prejudice had been unequivocally shattered. Marcus stood silently, watching Alicia and Admiral Parker disappear through the courtroom doors. He knew from that moment on he could never see the world the same way. The baseless biases and fears he'd held were forever undone by an undeniable truth. And more than ever, Marcus understood that he had been wrong, a mistake he would spend the rest of his life striving to atone for. As the last rays of sunlight slipped behind the distant tree line outside the courthouse, Admiral Parker paused, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if weighing each word before he spoke. Beside him, Alicia stood motionless, her face serene, yet her eyes betraying the depth of her emotion, as though she were replaying every difficult moment she had endured. A small group, including Marcus Wells, Frank Sullivan, and Chief Daniels, stood a short distance away, hesitating to approach. They could not escape their own shame and embarrassment, yet their curiosity about the secrets just unveiled kept them rooted to the spot. Those who had once doubted and accused Alicia now held their breath, waiting for the powerful man before them to explain. Admiral Parker turned to face them, his voice clear and strong, tinged with regret. Operation Silent Harbor is a specially designated top-secret counterterrorism mission carried out by the U.S. Navy in coordination with our intelligence partners. This is not an ordinary operation. It is a fight to protect our nation from very real and serious threats that most of us will never see. He paused, letting each word sink in. Marcus instinctively clenched his fists as waves of shame and remorse crashed over him more intensely than ever before. Commander Alicia Harper, as the senior officer of this task force, has spent the past year working covertly to disrupt a major terrorist plot targeting key ports along the northeast coast. If that plot had succeeded, the loss of life and property would have been catastrophic, potentially paralyzing an entire region's economy. Chief Daniels inhaled sharply, his eyes widening in stunned realization at the true scale of the mission the woman he had accused was bearing. It felt like a crushing blow to his pride and long-held arrogance. Throughout this mission, Commander Harper sacrificed her personal life and faced unimaginable danger. Admiral Parker continued, his tone solemn and respectful. She had to remain undercover, blend seamlessly into civilian life, and give up everything to infiltrate and stop this threat from the shadows. The marksmanship you witnessed was only a small part of the extraordinary skills she possesses. Frank Sullivan swallowed hard, regret catching in his throat. He recalled every moment he had doubted Alicia at the shooting range, every whispered prejudice he had shared with Carl Jensen. He could hardly believe that the woman he had called the police on was, in fact, a silent hero protecting people like him. Marcus Wells stood as still as a statue, his mind racing with guilt and shame. His former suspicions now felt like his greatest humiliation and regret. Admiral Parker looked each of them in the eye, his voice gentler but no less firm. "I do not fault you for your initial suspicions. That is a natural human response. But the lesson I want us all to learn from this is to think twice before passing judgment on anyone, especially when that judgment is rooted in prejudice and unfounded fear. Alicia turned to Marcus and Frank, her eyes free of anger, instead reflecting deep empathy and forgiveness. That silent compassion struck them even more profoundly. Finally, Marcus took a step forward, his voice trembling but earnest. "Commander Harper, I am truly sorry. I was wrong to judge you so unfairly and hastily. My actions were completely unacceptable." Frank Sullivan stepped up as well, his voice soft with contrition. "I apologize too, Commander Harper. I am deeply ashamed of myself." Alicia offered them a gentle, genuine smile before speaking with calm authority. "I accept your apologies. What matters now is that we all learn from this, so it never happens again." Admiral Parker nodded, clearly pleased by Alicia's forgiveness and strength of character. He signaled to the waiting officers to prepare to depart. Before stepping onto the waiting vehicle, he spoke one final time, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Operation Silent Harbor will continue until we have fully ensured the safety of our citizens. From this day forward, I hope we will give our absolute trust and support to those who protect our nation in silence, just as Commander Harper has." His words echoed through the quiet of the evening, engraving a powerful lesson in courage, sacrifice, and above all, the importance of treating every person with fairness and genuine respect. A few days after the dramatic courthouse events, Alicia returned to the civilian shooting range, bathed in the soft light of early morning. Mist still clung to the grass blades and the rows of targets, as if waiting once more for her arrival. When the military vehicle pulled up, Alicia stepped out and took in the familiar scene with a thoughtful glance. Inside the small office, Frank Sullivan stood as soon as he saw her silhouette through the window. He felt his heart pounding, not from worry, but from the deep remorse that had haunted him since that afternoon. He drew a steadying breath, hurried out the door, and approached Alicia with uncommon sincerity and concern. "Good morning, Commander Harper," Frank said quietly, hesitating. "I was told you'd be coming back to collect your personal equipment. I've set everything up for you in the office." Alicia nodded gently, meeting his eyes without a trace of bitterness or anger. That grace only deepened his guilt. I'm truly sorry, ma'am," Frank continued, voice trembling but earnest. "I behaved terribly. I let baseless fears and prejudice guide my actions. I called the police and treated you like a threat, even though you did nothing wrong." Alicia fell silent for a moment, studying him closely. In his weathered face, she saw genuine regret and torment. Finally, she spoke, her tone calm and compassionate yet candid. "Mr. Sullivan, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but do you realize how serious the consequences of those prejudices, intentional or not, can be? If I weren't a Navy officer, if no one had vouched for my innocence, what might have happened?" Frank bowed his head. Alicia's words cut deep, forcing him to face a frightening truth he had never seriously considered. "I certainly destroyed your life," he whispered. "I made an innocent person seem like a criminal just because you're different. I don't know how to make this right." Alicia stepped closer, her eyes soft with understanding. "I'm not here to condemn you, Frank. I only hope you see that discrimination and prejudice can destroy the best parts of us. They can turn us into strangers even to our own conscience." Frank looked up at her, his eyes filled with emotion and deep respect. "I promise you, Commander Harper, that from this moment on I will never let this happen again. I will remember your words and do everything I can to prevent such mistakes in the future." Alicia gave him a gentle, encouraging smile, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I believe you will." Frank led Alicia into his small office, where her equipment box sat neatly on the desk. He carefully opened it to reveal her rifle and personal belongings. With great respect, something he had never shown to any other shooter at the range, he lifted the rifle and handed it back to her with both hands. "Thank you," Alicia said, accepting her gear with a touch of warmth. "I appreciate this." Frank hesitated, then quietly asked, "May I ask you something, Commander Harper?" Alicia looked at him encouragingly. "Of course." "How are you able to remain so calm and forgiving after everything you've been through?" he asked, voice earnest and amazed. Alicia gazed thoughtfully out the window before answering. "Because I know that to overcome prejudice, we can't rely on anger or revenge. Only forgiveness, patience, and understanding can help people recognize their own mistakes and change for the better." Frank nodded in silence, Alicia's words sinking deeply into him and clarifying everything he had experienced. He realized this lesson might be the most valuable he'd ever learned. Painful, but essential to awakening the real person inside him. As Alicia turned to leave the office, Frank watched her go, his heart filled with a genuine respect he had never given anyone before. He vowed silently that from this moment forward, he would never again let prejudice cloud his heart or his judgment. In the days following the shooting range incident, Marcus Wells's mind remained haunted by the image of Alicia Harper, especially the gentle yet weighty look of forgiveness she had given him outside the courtroom. Each passing day felt like an ordeal, an intense internal battle between the prejudices he had unconsciously built up over the years and a painful truth he could no longer deny. He had made a grave mistake, one that shook his faith in himself to the core. Marcus realized that his years in law enforcement had made him rigid, skeptical, and all too quick to judge. He had always trusted his own instincts, but now, for the first time in his career, he confronted the terrifying fact that he too could be horribly wrong. One afternoon, as Marcus sat silently in his cramped office at the precinct, lost in thought, the phone rang, shattering the quiet. He answered, and the voice on the other end made him start. It was Admiral Parker. "Detective Wells," Admiral Parker's tone was still firm, but carried a new warmth. "I trust you've given careful thought to my earlier invitation. The Navy and NCIS need people like you, those who can face their mistakes and embrace change." Marcus was silent for a moment, his heart pounding. He understood the weight of the offer. It wasn't just a new assignment, but a chance to atone, to begin again, and to right the wrong he'd inflicted on Alicia and others like her. "Admiral Parker," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I accept. I want to change and make amends. I'll do whatever it takes to support NCIS." On the other end, Marcus heard a satisfied chuckle. "Excellent, Wells. I hoped you'd say that. I'll arrange for your rapid transfer. You'll join Operation Silent Harbor 2 under Commander Harper's command. You'll learn much from her." Marcus felt a lump in his throat at Alicia's name. Fate, it seemed, had a sense of irony. He would serve directly under the very person he had once so wrongly accused, but he knew it was necessary to learn life's hardest lesson. "I understand, Admiral," he said firmly. "I won't let you down." Weeks later, Marcus arrived at NCIS headquarters. As he stepped into the briefing room for Operation Silent Harbor 2, his heart skipped when he saw Alicia at the front, immaculate in her Navy uniform, her eyes calm but focused. Marcus bowed his head respectfully, a swell of shame and respect rising in him. Alicia approached, her gaze neither cold nor reproachful, just professional. "Welcome to our team, Agent Wells. Whatever happened before, I bear you no grudge. What matters now is our cooperation to protect our country and its people." Marcus met her eyes, voice trembling but resolute. "I understand, Commander Harper. I'm sorry again for my actions. I won't let it interfere with our mission." Alicia offered a small, genuine smile, an act of forgiveness far deeper than any words. In the days that followed, Marcus threw himself into the work with an eagerness and sense of duty he had never known. He saw firsthand how Alicia led the operation with unwavering professionalism, precision, and care, and his admiration for her only grew. He recognized that his earlier prejudices were completely misplaced. Alicia was not only an outstanding officer but a compassionate leader who genuinely cared for her team. Every decision she made was thoughtful and measured, reflecting both sharp insight and profound responsibility. During a private strategy meeting, Alicia assigned Marcus to directly support her through a critical phase of the operation. He couldn't hide his surprise. "Why do you trust me so completely after everything I did?" Alicia looked at him, her expression gentle yet firm. "Because those who admit their mistakes and strive to fix them are more trustworthy than anyone else. I see your sincerity, Marcus. That's why I trust you." Marcus was speechless, struck by the depth of her words. In that moment, he knew he had truly changed, not just in thought, but in how he viewed people and the world. From then on, he vowed to use every skill and every lesson he'd learned to protect those like Alicia, those who quietly sacrifice to uphold justice. Operation Silent Harbor. 2 became a new beginning for Marcus Wells, and a powerful reminder of the damage prejudice can wreak and the healing power of trust and understanding. He would never again let blind bias cloud his conscience. From that point on, each day at the Silent Harbor, 2 Command Center carried with it unrelenting determination and effort. Old doubts and distance were replaced by a powerful spirit of teamwork built on mutual respect and understanding. As commander, Alicia led the team through each tense phase of the mission with calm resolve. One crisp autumn morning, the town's familiar shooting range once again became the focal point when Alicia selected it as the staging area for the campaign's decisive operation. The usual stillness gave way to urgency as NCIS agents, local police, and other task force members readied themselves for the imminent raid. Inside the little office, Frank Sullivan spread out a detailed map of the surrounding area. He briefed Marcus and Alicia on the terrain and the suspicious locations he had monitored over the past several nights. Gone was the apprehension and mistrust of before. In its place was seriousness, enthusiasm, and full responsibility. "Commander Harper," Frank said with confidence, "I've watched these unknown individuals closely. Night after night, they've been unloading suspicious crates from a large truck into that old warehouse at the far edge of the woods. I'm convinced this is our primary target." Alicia nodded, her focus razor-sharp. "Excellent, Frank. Marcus, you'll coordinate between the local police and our tactical teams. We'll launch a simultaneous breach from both sides. No one gets out." Marcus acknowledged the order with a firm nod, his eyes brimming with respect as he took direction from Alicia. He understood this was his chance to prove he had truly changed and become a valuable part of this vital mission. Hours later, darkness fell over the range and the surrounding forest. Under Alicia's careful guidance, the teams moved in silence, using the cover of night and foliage to conceal their approach. Marcus and Frank advanced side by side, tense but resolute. As they neared the warehouse, Marcus signaled with a precise hand motion, and the local officers took up supporting positions. Despite his age, Frank moved swiftly and accurately, guiding Alicia and Marcus toward the target. A handful of guards appeared at the entrance, their expressions cold and alert. Marcus whispered into his radio. "Commander, we're in position. Ready to move on your mark." Alicia's voice came back calm and clear. "Teams, execute." Instantly, powerful floodlights snapped on from multiple angles, illuminating the warehouse exterior. A loudspeaker crackled to life. "This is NCIS and local law enforcement. You are surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." Instead of complying, the criminals drew their guns and opened fire. A fierce gunfight erupted. Alicia, Marcus, and Frank worked in seamless coordination, moving as one unit, covering and supporting each other flawlessly. Marcus shielded Frank as the older man directed a group of younger officers to safer cover. Meanwhile, Alicia's outstanding leadership kept the team focused amid the chaos and danger. Her professionalism and command only deepened Marcus's and Frank's admiration. After almost 20 intense minutes, the firefight ended. The dangerous criminals were subdued, and inside the warehouse, agents recovered weapons, explosives, and detailed attack plans, proof of a major victory for the operation. Once the scene was secure, Marcus stood next to Alicia, exhaling in relief, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Commander Harper, thank you for giving me the chance to make this right. Today, I truly feel I've done something good." Alicia returned his gaze with a warm smile. "You did very well, Marcus. Your transformation and dedication are the clearest evidence that prejudice and mistakes can be overcome, if we truly want to change." Frank Sullivan stepped forward, looking at both of them with warmth and sincerity. "I've lived over half a century, but today I finally understand the power of unity and cooperation. Thank you both for teaching me this invaluable lesson." The three stood together, their eyes meeting in mutual trust and respect. The barriers that had once stood between them had vanished, replaced by solidarity, teamwork, and the courage to stand up for what's right. And as Marcus looked toward Alicia, he understood that from now on, he would always stand on the side of justice, no matter who needed protection or where they came from. For he had learned that a person's true worth lies not in their race or background, but in their courage, loyalty, and the willingness to overcome prejudice to do what is right. As time went on, the shooting range settled back into its usual rhythm, just like any other day. But for Frank Sullivan, nothing would ever be the same. The profound experience of Operation Silent Harbor 2 had left an indelible mark on his heart, forcing him to see everything from an entirely new perspective. Frank realized that every person deserves to be judged by their skill and character, not by the color of their skin or where they come from. One early morning, before the first rays of sunlight had fully spread across the range, Frank was walking the firing lines when he stopped dead in his tracks. At the farthest lane stood a figure he knew well, a young black woman, slender and poised, her face serene yet confident. Frank took a few careful steps closer, watching her every subtle movement. That young woman, Jasmine Cole, assembled her rifle with swift, expert precision, executing each motion as smoothly and neatly as if she'd been trained for years. Frank felt his heart skip a beat, not out of suspicion, but because in Jasmine's stance and technique, he recognized echoes of Alicia Harper. In an instant, memories flooded Frank's mind. The doubt, the mistakes, and the shame he once carried for having treated Alicia unfairly. But this time, he knew exactly what needed to happen. There was no room for old prejudices anymore. Instead of hesitating, Frank turned on his heel and hurried back to the office. Picking up the phone without a second's delay, he called Marcus Wells, his voice urgent and unwavering. "Marcus, get over here immediately. I think we've just found another outstanding candidate for our next mission." Marcus didn't ask any questions. He simply replied, "On my way." I'll also notify Admiral Parker." Less than an hour later, Marcus and Admiral Parker stood beside Frank at the range. The three men watched, silent and impressed, as Jasmine delivered shot after shot with astonishing accuracy, a rare level of skill. Marcus spoke first, his eyes shining with satisfaction. "Frank, you were right. Jasmine is just like Alicia used to be, calm under pressure, self-assured, and exceptionally talented." Frank allowed himself a small, proud smile. "The most important thing is that we don't repeat past mistakes. People like Jasmine and Alicia deserve our support and protection. I will never let unfounded doubt cloud my judgment again." Admiral Parker nodded emphatically. "I completely agree, Frank. This is exactly why we need leaders like you and Marcus. People willing to challenge prejudice and recognize true potential." When Jasmine concluded her practice, the three approached her. She looked at them curiously, though her confidence never wavered. Frank stepped forward, sincerity shining in his eyes. "You must be Jasmine Cole." "I'm Frank Sullivan. This is Marcus Wells from NCIS and Admiral William Parker of the U.S. Navy. We're extremely impressed by your skill, and we'd like to talk to you about a special opportunity, a chance to serve your country." Jasmine blinked in surprise, then quickly composed herself, her voice clear and resolute. "I'm ready to give my very best, Sir Sullivan." Frank regarded her with genuine respect. "I'm certain you'll do great things, Jasmine. And know this, you'll always have our full support. None of us will let prejudice stand in your way again." Marcus offered a warm nod. "We've learned a critical lesson from a dear friend and outstanding comrade, Commander Alicia Harper. She showed us that talent and bravery know no bounds of race, background, or anything else." Jasmine listened to every word, her expression lighting up at the sincerity in their voices. "I won't let you down," she declared, her tone brimming with determination. After Jasmine walked away, Frank, Marcus, and Admiral Parker stood together, watching her figure fade into the distance. Marcus finally broke the silence. "Thanks to Alicia, we've all changed. Her greatest legacy isn't just the success of Silent Harbor 2, it's how she transformed our understanding and trust in one another." Frank nodded slowly, emotion in his voice. "She taught us that only by letting go of prejudice and opening our hearts can we truly see each person's worth." Admiral Parker placed a hand on their shoulders, his tone solemn and resolute. "I believe this change will be the strongest foundation for protecting our nation, not only today, but for generations to come." The three men stood side by side, gazing toward the horizon. Alicia Harper's journey had ended, but her legacy, one of forgiveness, courage, and unity, would live on in their hearts, forever reminding them that true strength lies in overcoming prejudice to champion justice for all. What do you think of Alicia Harper's story? Have you ever witnessed or experienced similar prejudice in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful, please hit the like button, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales. Thank you for watching and for being with us.